Hey there, welcome to Darkroom Photography. This introduction, it's just a very short little slideshow. I wanted to go over a couple of things that were really important to review, that we'll do this in person when we tour the darkroom, and this is nothing new for those of you who've been in darkroom classes with me before, or just in general. This is pretty typical. But it is a different environment. One of the big things to remember about the darkroom is it's literally a dark room. Depending how well you see in the dark, depending on how old you are, depending on how bright the area was that you walked in from, that's really going to directly affect how long it takes for you to actually be able to see just anything in the dark room. Our dark room is actually it's pretty bright for a dark room, but it still takes about, 2 to 5 minutes for your eyes to really get used to the dark. So there's a couple things that are just kind of safety issues, as well as generally, in this day and age when most of us are digital natives, we grew up on digital media, and now you're getting into film after being pretty experienced with taking photos on your phone or maybe in digital cameras, formats, things like that. Um, so, it's important to kind of think about the fact that this light sensitive medium that we're working with is something really new for a lot of people, something that I myself had to remember as I started teaching darkroom after a few years of teaching digital, that, the technology has kind of changed. So let's go over this. You'll hear this again from me, but I don't think it's a bad idea to just go over things more than once. All right, let's get started. Go back to here. Okay, well, I can't really read that. Okay, so let's just do a little overview here. The darkroom is it's a chemical lab, right? So if you had chemistry classes in high school, or if you've been in a darkroom before, you'll notice that the materials that we use are kind of set up in that same way that a chemistry lab would be, that there's measuring equipment, there's a lot of protocols around safety and dry and wet and dirty and clean. Contamination or cross-contamination is a really big deal in photography, especially since, what we're going to be learning is that whether it's paper or film, the exposure doesn't really become a visible image. It's a latent image. And it doesn't become visible until it undergoes that chemical change, right? So if you apply chemistry to the paper or to your film or even just water, it changes the way you're able to actually see the image. It changes the way the image gets developed. It changes the way the image exposes. So wet and dry stages need to not mix at all. Very important. The other thing is that the chemistry itself cancels its other chemistry out depending on the order in which you do things. So if you've got tongs and you're putting your tongs into the developer, because that's where they go, and you're taking your paper out and you're just plopping it into the fix and you're stabbing it with your tongs in the fix, and then you go ahead and put that back into the developer. If somebody takes those tongs and they touch their paper, it's got residue of fix on it. And for those of you who know this already, the fix cancels out essentially the developer, right? So then that person gets like weird marks and things on their print that they've worked really hard to make, and you just ruined it for them. So, and the darkroom, unlike other work areas, although maybe it's like this, I think about home with kitchens and things like that. Usually it's the person who has like the lowest tolerance for the mess that ends up having to clean it all the time, but that's a totally different subject. I won't go there. It's a touch point for me. Um, but when it comes to the photographic darkroom, what goes around comes around. Usually if you're the sloppy one in the darkroom, and you're ruining other people's work because you can't keep your shit straight, um, sorry, you can't keep things nice and clean, let's just say that, eventually it's going to come back and get you, because you're going to be the one that is the next one to use the tongs. So for yourself and for everybody else, and just for the general like peace and well-being of the darkroom community, please be clean and like way more fastidious than you normally would with your own stuff. Just be as clean as you possibly can and don't cross-contaminate anything. All right. The wet and dry areas, I already described that. And the other thing I want you all to know is that our darkroom at PCC at the Southeast campus is not only shared between all the darkroom classes and all of us, but it's also shared with the non-credit courses. In fact, we are actually still relatively new guests in this space. And so it's really important, not just for us and not just for our kind of general community hygiene and the way we should be treating each other as a group as we had come back from the pandemic and we're all just a little feral still. It's also really important to me to show my colleagues that I respect them and I respect their classes and I respect their time and I expect the same thing from them. And so part of that is for me to really reinforce with my students and with my actions, that their space is important to me too. And so things like cleaning up after ourselves, making sure we're taking anything that's dry home with us as much as we can. Anything that's not dry gets put into a place that's kind of out of the way for his students. And it's just a general way of us trying to be accommodating to one another. So that's something that I would like to model. I actually need practice doing that a little bit more. It's a little tough sometimes with a dark room because it's kind of like it's your kitchen, you're the chef, and if you're sharing it with another chef, you both probably have very different ways of doing things, and that's okay. But learning to work together is more important than having things your own way. So I am practicing that. Let's see, I think I even used that in here. Yes, communal or gang dark rooms, as they're typically called. This is something that you'll run into in any other dark room that you work in. You got to leave the place better than you found it. It's a leave no trace policy. You bring something in, you take it back out, you pick up your trash, you make sure that everything looks nicer than it did when you came in. If you see anything that, looks weird, or if you've been left with a mess, feel free to let me or let the tech, Lindsay, know. Let us know what happened. We have a sign in, sign out sheet. If somebody needs to be reminded or just, talk to about like, hey, it's kind of crappy that you left this person with all this mess or you left me with all this mess. It's really important that we actually give people a chance to correct their behavior. And if they're getting away with it because nobody called them out, or if they just don't notice and nobody knows it's them, whatever the behavior is, typically folks want to know, and they want to have a chance to do the right thing. So by letting us know if you, just find things left a mess for you, it's really important to do that so that we can make sure that everybody's doing what they can to make it all run really smoothly. Again, right? Like this is all such common sense. All right, protocols and expectations. So operate within the boundaries of your abilities and comfort when it comes to safety in the dark room. I am going to ask you, as far as your artwork goes, your thought process, your writing, your experiments, or activities, I'm going to ask you to push yourself beyond those comfort zones. When it comes to the dark room, if you don't know how to do something and you're unsure, that's a really good sign that you should probably ask a question. If there's someone in the darkroom that is like in the second darkroom class, or they're a portfolio student, or there's somebody who obviously has a really good grip on how to do things in the darkroom. Sometimes we have returning students, so you can ask them, absolutely. If you're still feeling like maybe that's not the right answer and you need a little bit more certainty, then ask the tech or ask me, or refer to the materials that I have. This is partially why I'm actually doing this, so that there's not that weird, well, in this class, Kim said that we could do this, and in that class, they said they could do this, and it's different, so this will hopefully clear up some of that. Again, if you don't know, ask. Just ask. No problem. You're not here because you know everything. You're here because you want to learn stuff. I don't care what that stuff is. If it's a matter of like, I don't know how to use a rotary paper cutter, I'm not familiar with how to use this item, and everybody else is, and I feel weird because of that, like, just ask me. I ask silly questions all the time. So just ask. All right. If you know and no one asked you, keep your mouth shut. No, just kidding. If you do know, you've had the experience, if it's something about like somebody doesn't know how to dodge and burn, the tendency, especially for those of us who really want other people to succeed, and it's really uncomfortable for us to watch them struggle, please don't take that learning experience away from them. If you are asked for help, if someone says, hey, I was wondering if you could show me how to do this. If you feel comfortable and you have the time, please do. Otherwise, let them know that they can come and get me, or they can get Lindsay, and they can get help, right? No one else is being paid to be the instructor in this class, just me. So it's important that you let people have their own learning experiences. You let them struggle a little bit and figure it out. It's really important to let them struggle. It's part of the way I teach. Not, that sounds bad. It's not part of the way that I teach that people struggle. I do see a tremendous amount of benefit for folks being put into a situation where they have to problem solve without someone else giving them the answer. That's a better way of saying it, I think. So yeah, if someone keeps coming to you for questions and you're feeling like, dude, I'm not the lab tech and I'm not the teacher, come to me and I'm happy to like intervene in a way that's really low key, because these kinds of things develop a lot in classes like this, as well as like digital photography or ceramics. I'm sure you've had other classes where someone is just more than happy to help you, totally well-intentioned, but you're like, dude, I got it, right? So just, unless you've been asked, keep your opinions to yourself. If you know someone needs help and you have not been asked and you just cannot stand that they're struggling, come and let me know. I'm happy to like hear you be like, I just can't deal with it. It's so simple. Why don't they understand this? Totally fine. I had to go through my own training of like, sit with the discomfort of watching someone struggle, because I saw throughout the years how beneficial it was, right? All right, beating a dead horse on that one. Be considerate of others. That's self-explanatory. Please, treat others the way you would like to be treated. Be aware of your space and move slower than you think you need to, as well as announce yourself when you're going into or out of the dark room. Those two things feel a little overcautious, but especially in the beginning, or especially early in the day when you're in the dark room and you can't see a damn thing, those two things are really important. You do not want to run into a hard edge surface because you can't see it, and you don't want to crack somebody else in the head with your head because you turned the corner and neither of you saw or heard each other. So please be aware, especially at first. Keep each other kindly accountable. What that means is if you see someone being unsafe, maybe not watching their fingers while they're using the guillotine cutter. There's a good example of sharing this darkroom space. I do not like guillotine cutters in the dark room for very obvious reasons. If you see someone like putting their fingers there and just joking around or whatever, like just say something, please. If someone is being unsafe, typically that's more of like a sloppy thing or just not being safe with the chemistry or splashing or whatever. It's everybody's business. It's going to affect everybody. So feel free to say something. Give them the chance to, you don't want to back them into a corner. But like I said, keep each other kindly accountable. That's all you got to do. And if you're not comfortable with that, let either Lindsay or myself know, and we're happy to step in if we didn't already see it ourselves. Make suggestions to me, ask questions of me, and feed your curiosity. Feel free to do research. Feel free to ask me stuff that you're like, this isn't really what we're doing in this class, but it's interesting and I wanted to ask you about it. Feel free. That is totally fine. I find out a lot. I learn a lot through my students. And so that's a really exciting part of this experience of teaching for me. Also, know that unsafe, intimidating, unwelcome touching, or any other behavior or words or actions, anything that makes one student feel like they don't belong or they belong less than another, or makes them feel unwelcomed, none of that is tolerated for any reason. If you observe it, if you're feeling it, if you are that person that's like unsure, maybe I said this thing or maybe I did this thing, please come to me. I myself, unfortunately, slash fortunately, I guess, I don't know, have navigated a lot of this crap in my lifetime as a student, as an instructor, as a person. So, it's really important to me, and I feel very fierce and passionate about this, that I want to make sure that everybody feels, as equally welcome in this classroom as the next person. Y'all deserve to be here. I'm happy that you're here. And it's my job to make sure that you continue to feel welcome here, right? So please communicate with me if there's any concerns at all, and we'll take it to the next step and see, where we go from there. But I'm definitely here for you all, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. And if it's something that you need to talk to somebody else about because it concerns me, or you just don't feel comfortable coming to me, you're free to talk to Lindsay. You can also just ask me, can I file a care report for something? And I'm happy to support you in that way too. Okay, so whatever you need. All right, fun stuff. When you get to the darkroom, after we've gone through, how to set up the darkroom, how to use it, and you're there to like either process film or print or whatever it is you're working on, you always should check in with me or Lindsay, and then sign into our Open Lab log, put your name, the date, and the time. You're going to sign out too, although that's less important than signing in. This is how we basically justify more lab hours, as well as make sure folks are working in the lab. So it does tie back into the credit you get for the class, not school credit, but you know what I mean, the grade you get for the class. And it lets us know that the lab is actually being used during the times that we've staffed it. So it's important for those two things to match, the times when you guys can attend and the times when we can staff. Do a quick visual sweep of your area, of the dark room. If there's anything that looks weird or exceptionally dirty or gross, please let us know. We want to make sure we catch that. It won't be like your fault that you caught it, you clean it kind of thing. Just let us know that something looks weird and we'll follow up with it. Thank you. Hang your bag, your coat, etc. on one of the hooks in the north wall over by the film drying cabinet. We don't have a really optimal place for your stuff to be stored. If you don't have a big bag, you could probably put everything at your workstation, but otherwise just be aware that you're going to have to keep everything close to you because we have had thefts and things disappear very quickly. So make sure you know where things are at all times. Once you get in, you've hung your stuff up, you've checked in, you've signed in, choose a vacant enlarger and set your work items at the station. And then if there are not chemicals set up, or maybe you're coming in late and nobody's in there, feel free to ask the instructor or the lab tech, like, hey, can I set up the chems? Hey, can I check the fix? Y'all can check the fix whenever you want to. But if there's anything that you want to do to help things along, or even just ask us, like, could you make sure the chems are fresh? Or when was the last time you mixed these things? Those questions are totally welcome. Okay, and probably will get you printing and making your work a little faster if you're willing to help out. Plus, it's kind of fun to learn how to do it yourself. When you are getting ready to clean up, I would give myself 15 to 30 minutes to get everything finished. That means that while your last prints or negatives are drying, you can clean up your station, make sure that everything gets returned to where you got it from, whether it's the tech or myself that gave it to you, or you go back and you clean off and dry your tanks and reels. All those little things can happen while your negatives are drying or while your prints are drying. Before you sign out, just double check and see if you have a few more minutes, if there's something else that you can do to be helpful. That would be really appreciated. The less time either myself or Lindsay are cleaning up after everybody, the more time we have to do cool things like prep for the next activities or give you feedback on your work, or that's more of a me thing than a Lindsay thing, or just make sure that things are ready to go on the next time, right? So the less time we have cleaning up, the more time we have to actually do stuff for you all that's way more fun than cleaning up. And I think that's it. Yeah, the more you help, the more you learn. If you've got a real knack for working in the lab and you've got work study, we'd love to talk to you, because we are looking for people who can work in the lab independently and be responsible for the folks who are working in there, to hire for work study positions, which is a great way to get financial aid and also some pretty badass work experience and get to work in the lab while you're working, which is kind of awesome too. That's the wonder of the work study job. All right. So before you leave, make sure to gather everything from your workstation, take your negative out of your negative carrier, and then larger, put the negative carrier back, put your negative back in the sleeve. Don't just throw it in your shit. And I did it again. Don't throw it in your box and then just take it home loose. It's going to get all scratched up. If you accidentally left your negative in the negative carrier, right before the end of each shift, we'll be going around and making sure that there are no negatives stuck in the enlargers. We will put them in an orphan box. They will be sad until you come back and retrieve them, but they will be there. We are not responsible for your lost prints and negatives. If something happens to them and they are not in the box and they are not still in the enlarger, we cannot be responsible for that. You are responsible for bringing the things home that are yours and removing them from the lab, because it is shared. We don't have control what happens after the community ed folks come in. And they particularly hate having our stuff left in the enlargers and on the print, the drying racks. So that's just good to know. All right, is all your equipment at the station put back and organized for the next person? Did it look really, really nice when you got there? Awesome. Leave it really nice. Did it look crappy when you got there? Sorry, leave it really nice. Return everything to their cabinets or storage places. If you don't know, ask. We'll help you find the home. Gather all your dried negatives and dried prints from the print dryers and the drying racks. Take those home. If your print is not completely dry, it will get sticky. And so what I recommend is that you get at least 2 pieces of watercolor paper. You could borrow some. You could split a big sheet with some friends. They are not that expensive to get. And so if you just got a couple sheets, you could probably put a print between them, and it would be fine. We will be building some drying racks soon, but I wouldn't expect that until spring term. And let's see, drying prints and negatives over the weekend will be removed and stored in the lost box. And again, these will be sad, but I guess they'll be keeping your negatives company. That's kind of it for now. We'll go over more stuff in person, but hopefully this gives you a little bit of a preview for what's expected. And I think that's kind of the big thing, is that I run a pretty clean ship. I am also dealing with another, faculty member who is using the lab in the way that they want. And so I would rather spend most of my time this term teaching and supporting you all rather than being the darkroom maid. So help me out with that, and everything's going to be awesome. And if you have any questions, you're always welcome to ask.